Welcome in, guys, to Rover Sports. We are here. The day is Tuesday. 2 consecutive times that I happen to get the day correct. I'm here with Big Al Zafiri, the host of Rover Sports, and Bruce the Sports Doc out today. Charlie Bowles, they should be in next week. But we got plenty still to talk about today on the show, and we're going to talk all about everything about Sunday, the Super Bowl, and we're going to have also on the show Alex Rollins call in. He is a big San Francisco 49ers YouTuber and NFL guy. He's going to be calling in about 5-10 minutes. Al, first I want to get, before we go into all the nuances of the game, how would you rank the entertainment of the game?
The football game entertainment, I would go, it was good. It was a lot better than what we dealt with last year because that was a complete snooze fest. But I mean, I can't. I'm an Eagles fan, so I'm a little part and parcel. But that was a very exciting game. But this was an exciting game up to the end. It looked like San Fran panicked a little bit. I have a couple questionable things I saw with Kyle Shanahan. Almost Andy Reid-like decisions throughout the game, but mainly towards the end of the game that I think ultimately cost the Niners the game. I think the Niners definitely had that, and I think you have a call here.
Is it Is it Alex?
Yeah.
Yes.
How's it going?
Yes. Hey, we have on the line now Alex Rollins, NFL. He is a 49ers and NFL YouTuber, and he's kind enough to join us here on Rover Sports here. Philadelphia Sports Radio, and Alex, thank you so much for calling in. How are you?
No problem. Doing good. Ready to talk about the Super Bowl.
So are you a diehard Niners fan?
I'm actually not at all. I get that question almost all the time on my YouTube channel, and I kind of by chance reached out to a 49ers blog to see if I could cover them this year just to get a little more publicity, and they said yes. So I had no idea after 2-14 they would be any better than 6-10, 8-8, and here we are a couple points away from a Super Bowl win. So no, I'm from Oakland, grew up a Raiders fan. They are going to Las Vegas, so screw them. With all due respect to the new Las Vegas Raiders, but I'm kind of teamless right now. So maybe the Philadelphia Eagles will be come knocking on my door.
So how do you handle that as a guy who, covering one team, likes another team? Now that team leaves. I mean, I guess the Rams dealt with that a few years back, going from St. Louis to L.A. Are you just writing them off because of the move?
Yeah, I mean, emotionally, the moment they said they were going to Vegas, I didn't really see how I could continue to follow them and be a fan of them. And I was also pretty frustrated with, I guess the Gruden hiring is starting to look up a bit, but that frustrated me when it happened with all the money he's receiving and then some of those moves he made pretty much immediately. So it was kind of an easy break for me, to be quite honest with you guys.
That is very interesting.
I wouldn't know
because I thought that Gruden, though, being like kind of an Oakland lifer and still having Vegas like 5 hours away, and the fact that the Raiders moved from L.A., I still think that a lot of Raiders fans are going to still stay with this team. So I still think a lot of Raiders fans are going to stay with Vegas, and I mean, I think a part of you has to root for their success, though. I really do. I mean, well, maybe moving or going to Vegas games would be tough, but do you not like Gruden then?
No, I mean, I don't really have much of a problem with him. I wouldn't. I'm such a diehard Oakland person. I grew up here, and it was just tough to see. I mean,
sure.
To even turn it on you guys, what would you do if the Philadelphia Eagles moved to Wisconsin? It would. I think you might root for the core group of players to maybe have some success, but it's ultimately just. I mean, it's almost blasphemous to think that any team would be moving from Philadelphia, or I always liken it to just teams in America or teams in the NFL moving across country like that. Imagine in Germany, like, one of the soccer teams are like, hey, we're playing in Spain. And it's just like, what? Like, how is that, like, emotionally what that does to all these fans is just kind of ridiculous.
No,
So,
I understand that, and the Chargers and the Seattle Sonics. But we have Alex Rollins here, and Alex, we delayed it long enough. Let's talk about the Super Bowl because you happen to follow Kyle Shanahan all year long. He's been a guy that has schemed the running game so beautifully. He's able to get Jimmy Garoppolo going play action pass. And on 2nd and 5, did you agree with calling those pass plays? Were those pass plays open? Kind of take us into what Kyle was trying to do, and were you very offended by the strategy to not continue running the football there on those final couple possessions for the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you lose the Super Bowl, regardless of what you do or how well you call the game, people are going to tear you apart. It was definitely a tough stretch for the 49ers in the fourth. And, I mean, looking at Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers, play action versus non-play action, I mean, it's pretty much night and day. You know, with those play action passes, completing 80%, 8 yards per attempt, his rating was 123. And, you know, then when they get away from the play action, which, of course, you can't run every play, he's a 50% passer, 6 yards per attempt, threw his 2 INTs on straight dropbacks, and a 29 rating. So, you know, that's he's obviously propped up a little bit with those play action passes. In terms of Shanahan getting away from the run, I think if you really, I break down these games. I watch the Coaches All 22 film for my YouTube videos, and that Chiefs front was really, really stout, and I think a little bit surprisingly so. I think a lot of people coming into this matchup expected that the Chiefs were going to struggle a little bit. There was a lot of fanfare about how their outside rushing defense is. You know, if teams run outside zone or a couple toss plays, that the Chiefs have struggled this year against those. And really, the interior of the 49ers offensive line, especially their right guard, Mike Person, was just getting blown up repeatedly. And that didn't matter whether it was a pass or a run, but we've seen, you know, Raheem Mostert might get a lot of the, you know, credit for, especially last week. But in general, you know, people might look at the statistics of the running game and how good these backs have been. But if you look at the holes Raheem Mostert's been running through, they have been gigantic, and he doesn't sometimes get touched 20 yards down the field. And those just weren't there in this game. You know, Chris Jones was a monster. He was just beating that interior line immediately off the snap, and the movement that the 49ers offensive line has been getting in the last couple months, this entire season really, just wasn't really there. So additionally, the Chiefs were bringing some run blitzes, so they were putting a linebacker on the line and just blitzing him right off the snap. So it was clogging up some of those gaps the 49ers are usually comfortable running and or getting, and you know, I think Shanahan was noticing that the Chiefs were completely devoted to canceling out the running game, putting guys in the box and on the line of scrimmage, and just not really making him feel comfortable calling more and more running plays.
And George Kittle in this game, he had the one play before the half that was a controversial call, but it seemed like they bracketed a honey badger, Tyrann Mathieu, on him, and there were a couple of frustrating plays where Jimmy had an opportunity to find George Kittle. It seemed like George was open and Jimmy just didn't get to that progression. Maybe it was because of the pass protection, but how would you grade how Kansas City was able to neutralize George in this game?
Yeah, I mean, there were some instances where you would hope that Kittle would be out there running a route, especially in the fourth quarter of the game. I guess they felt like they had to keep him back in the backfield and block, which, of course, he's been doing plenty of this year, so not entirely surprising. But when he was out there running routes, it was very evident that the Chiefs were not going to let Kittle burn them, beat them in any way, really. There was brackets pretty much nonstop. And what I thought was a little bit interesting as well was they pretty much identified Deebo Samuel and George Kittle as the main two threats. And that's not shocking, but there was a surprising amount of double-team bracket type coverages on Deebo Samuel. And so those were really the two guys the Chiefs were not going to let beat them in that game. You're totally right, though. There was a play. It was in the fourth quarter. There was 5 minutes left. I believe it was 3rd and 5, and they ran the exact same play that George Kittle pretty much burned the Saints on at the end of the fourth quarter in week 14 or 15 or whatever that was. And it's this option route. It's out of a bunch formation with 3 receivers, and Kittle kind of fakes out. Then he goes inside, and based off the leverage of the defensive back, he's going to be open a lot of the time. And if you look at Kyle Shanahan's playbook, at the way he diagrams these plays, Kittle's the number one read. And for whatever reason, Garoppolo went outside. He tried to hit Kendrick Bourne. There was a little bit of a miscommunication, but I'm not entirely sure why Garoppolo got away from that progression. Of course, the fourth quarter for him was not necessarily ideal, but yeah, I watching the game, Kittle didn't have the type of impact that he usually does, and even in the blocking game, which he's all world at, really, he struggled a tiny bit, and you can see him. There's some frustration on film of just missing blocks or somebody just kind of moving him out of the way in ways that we're not usually accustomed to seeing when watching him. And I think maybe the 49ers' inexperience showed a little bit more than the Chiefs' inexperience, plenty of players on the Chiefs have not been to the Super Bowl, just like the 49ers. And I think the game was a little bit bigger for the 49ers than the Chiefs. I would say that.
All right, well, let me ask you this question. So it seemed to be, I would say, especially towards the end, but there's been, with Kyle Shanahan, some calls, some ideas like let's take the end of the first half, going right into the halftime. About a minute left on the clock. They have their timeouts. It seemed to be like they were just going to let time run down and go into the half with the score tied. But then they throw 20, 30 yards down the field. They're in the midfield position. Now they're scrambling to go, to try to make something out of it. And what was that? Was that just like, I don't understand what happened there. Like, Kyle Shanahan just seemed like he changed his mind, and they wasted at least 30, 40 seconds off the clock just, doing nothing beforehand when they could have called timeout, grabbed a couple plays out of playbook, and maybe even scripted the next 2 plays.
Yeah, the 2-minute warning or end of the half for both halves was very odd, very confusing.
Very Andy Reid-esque.
Exactly. He's looking right at the other side of the sideline, and he's I guess he's copying the old Big Red strategy, right?
And it's kind of funny because he coming off the Super Bowl against with Atlanta against the Patriots, kind of had a little scrutiny for the way things were handled after that, letting the game get away with them. And once again, they looked like, I wouldn't say they had the Niners had the game in hand, but they looked like they had the game. They were in
some people were joking that Andy Reid throughout the game levitated into Kyle's body, across the sideline.
Well, I'm just saying, it looked like, I would say about 3/4 of the game, it seemed that the Niners were in the driver's seat.
After that interception, I was feeling very comfortable that the 49ers were going to win the game, Alex.
No, completely. The analytics portion of sports and football media, if you will, had I believe there was a graphic that said it was about 95% win probability for the 49ers, which was a very similar number to the Falcons-Patriots game, just like you mentioned. So Shanahan, and I believe there was a statistic as well that heading into the fourth quarter, teams who are winning by 10 or more in the Super Bowl are 28-3, including the Super Bowl, and 2 of those losses of the 3 are Kyle Shanahan. So
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about that. He must be just he's living his nightmare right
That's
now.
what I'm saying. Like, and it always seemed like Andy Reid was snake bitten. Finally gets over that hump. 222nd win of his career. Finally wins the Super Bowl on 222 or 2220, whatever you want to call it. Everybody was getting all that fascinated over the numbers.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, is this something like, because I know Kyle Shanahan left Atlanta, right after that Super Bowl. Is this, and you saw Atlanta seem like they never were the same since then. Is this something you think they could haunt San Fran going into next year and some following years? That could kind of like keep them down, maybe not be the resurgent team that we think they could be, because on paper, they look like they could be good for a long time.
Yeah, no, I think it comes down to the systematic way they've built their organization. And, I mean, a lot of people, in my opinion, wrongly blame Kyle Shanahan for that Super Bowl in Atlanta. Everybody dings him and gives him a hard time for the way they collapsed. Don't get me wrong, but somebody had to put up 28 in the first place to be up 28-3, and Kyle Shanahan was calling the plays for those 28 points. So, he put up.
Oh, you could put a lot.
He put up a pretty.
Yeah, you could put a lot. You could put a lot of blame on the defense. They allowed up, the rest of those points to let them take. But I mean, it was kind of a collapse all around, I believe, in that second half for the Falcons, that Super Bowl, because the offense couldn't score any. They blew the proverbial load in the first half. Couldn't do anything in the second half, and then the defense couldn't stop Tom Brady.
Yeah, no, completely. And I think back to your question about what the Niners are going to look like next year. I think when we start to see teams lose the Super Bowl, maybe some of their players are older and retire, or some of their players might, the key assets might go somewhere in free agency or trades or something like that, or, some of the coordinators are leaving. And the Niners are really consistent across the board in most of those categories. We have Shanahan back, of course. We have all the offensive coordinator, run game coordinator, pass game coordinator, and then the defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, of course, is coming back as well. And this is, like you said, a young team, and especially with the defensive line that's really the core of the team. All those guys are young studs, and they're all coming back. Nick Bosa, of course, obviously, Rookie of the Year.
Huge.
Absolutely unbelievable talent. I mean, these guys are going to be good for years into the future, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Alex, off of that point, a lot of people are saying that Mahomes is the next dynasty, and that Mahomes is going to continue to win the AFC. But I wanted to go back to the game, and a lot of people are going to put the blame on Jimmy Garoppolo and just say he's very system-like as a quarterback, or that he's not even capable of winning a Super Bowl. But I've seen him game in and game out come up with clutch plays, and I'm a big Garoppolo defender, like against the Cardinals, against the Rams. He made big throws against New Orleans. He dug them out of the 21-7 deficit. I felt like in this game, the offense couldn't get rolling because I actually think that Mahomes in Kansas City played very well in the first half. People think that Mahomes, because of the interception, was off, but the 49ers defense just had trouble getting the Chiefs off the field in the first half. I think that was a huge key to the game for Kansas City to be tied 10-all, because I think that San Fran was the better team, but Kansas City playing ball control, it just felt like the Niners didn't get enough possessions in this game because Kansas City was converting those third downs and staying on the field so long.
Yeah, there was a couple very long drives from the Chiefs, and I remember when I was watching this game live, I felt like the first half was over in like 35 minutes. Like it felt like it just flew by. And then if you look in the second half, there were a couple very long Chiefs drives that really did, keep the 49ers off the field. I'm not the biggest Jimmy Garoppolo fan. I think actually was better than people realize in this game. I think a lot of people are just absolutely killing him. And when I watched it live, I that's the way I felt watching it. It seemed like he was missing a lot of throws and just kind of the weak link on the team. And there really wasn't too many plays where he just was, in the wrong, the issue with what was going on.
It even looked like the Sanders throw was a little bit of a difficult angle with the way that Emmanuel was running. But did that throw, was that a very makeable pass too, the one in particular?
No, that's a very difficult question, and it's an interesting conversation. Ultimately, you have to make that pass. But, it was I counted it. It was 50 yards downfield. Sanders was obviously open. So the route combination they had, brought the safety down away from over the top, so Sanders was going to be open. But if you're that franchise guy, if you're that, Tom Brady-esque, of course, there's only one of those dudes. But if you're the dude, you have to make the throw. You have to make that throw. It's going to win the Super Bowl. He didn't necessarily have a ton of pressure in his face. It was right there for him to take it. And at the end of the day, if you're not going to make it, you're not going to make it. I always I really love this analogy from Bucky Brooks. And he says that quarterbacks are either trucks or trailers. And if they're a truck, if they're a Patrick Mahomes, they are going to put the team on their back and be able to just lead. Maybe it's a lackluster offense. Maybe it's a good offense, but they're not playing well that day. They are going to lead this team and put points on the scoreboard. And on the other side of that, there's trailers. And there are guys that you can win with, and they, might be your game managers, might be your system quarterbacks more so if you get into those quarterback tropes and whatnot. But they're not necessarily guys who are going to lead your team and put guys on your back and put up all those points. It might be a Kirk Cousins or an Alex Smith or a guy who's solid but not going to be the dude. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo's in that second part of the category. He did have some of those games, like you said. The New Orleans game was amazing. We saw him have some game-winning drives, with that Cardinals game, and he played very well in the Rams game. But this is a guy who he open receivers. I think Shanahan is, in my opinion, the best in the league at having receivers wide open. And this system is the friendliest quarterback system in the entire NFL. You will constantly, if you watch any 49ers game or any game Kyle Shanahan has coached, there are 3 or 4 plays where all of a sudden a guy is wide open all by himself. And you say, what the hell is the defense doing? And that's just what Shanahan does. So I think many, many quarterbacks can excel in this system. And if you get one who's decent or, maybe solid like Garoppolo, it's going to be hard for him to have a flat-out bad season where you say, this is not the guy. This is just not – he is not having success because of how open these receivers are. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting to me what the 49ers will do with Garoppolo. You have to bring him back this next year because of the stability he provides. And you have to ask, what is our second option? Because there really isn't one. I don't know what you would do necessarily. But Garoppolo, it's a difficult situation in San Francisco.
Well, Alex, I just want to thank you so much for joining our show today, for coming on just fresh off of the Super Bowl. I really love your work and appreciate your work on your YouTube channel. You're very in-depth with your commentary, and anybody out there can go to Alex Rollins NFL and can really watch some of these schemes that Kyle is running. And you cover the 49ers and also some other teams. So, Alex, I want to thank you for calling in, man. Had a great time, and thank you again.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, nice meeting you.
So that's Alex Rollins. Again, you can find his work, Alex Rollins NFL. So, Al, I fought in this game 20-10. I think you picked the 49ers as well, isn't that true?
I picked the 49ers, and if they scored with Emmanuel Sanders, I would have been spot on with my
27-24?
Yeah. I would have been spot on.
I heard a couple of people predict that.
I would have been spot on 49ers 27-24 if they got that pass to Emmanuel Sanders.
So were you feeling it? You know, they hit Kendrick Bourne on that drive. They were kind of moving it. It seemed like the Chiefs deflected a lot of passes. I thought Jimmy G could have been a hero. I thought it was another Eli Manning situation coming up, a Big Ben. I really still believed in the Niners a lot. And then that fourth down play, delay a game kind of, very weird. He ended up getting sacked. Is he going to get out of the grasp or not?
Yeah.
And then the game just suddenly ended.
It seemed a little bit of panic mode at that point for me, for the Niners, for Jimmy G.
After the second touchdown to Kansas City.
Yeah. It seemed panic mode. The play call was pedestrian at best.
Yes.
And it just seemed that they just, you saw that. He had no one to throw to. Nobody was open. The O-line couldn't hold against the Kansas City D-line, which isn't normally noted as a very, powerful line. Not that they're not good, but they're not.
Well, they've really come on lately.
Compared to San Fran, San Fran definitely has the upper hand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the one thing is looking towards the future with them is that division is going to be very strong. I think next year San Fran should be top in there still. I think Seattle's going to make progress, which makes it another battle again.
They still have a lot of money tied up into Russell Wilson.
And I think you're going to see Arizona make some
progress.
I actually think the
Rams.
one team's going to go backwards is the Rams.
I actually like the Rams, though.
I think the Rams have a lot more money tied up than just Russell Wilson in Seattle.
I mean, and Arizona will be okay, but the Rams, I still wouldn't necessarily.
What about
quit.
your boy Kyle Murray there? Offensive Player of the Year.
Another future Hall of Fame. I thought he did all right this year, Al. I thought he came on in some games, but I actually have more faith in like Drew Lock and a couple other rookies because he's like he does look small out there on film. Fitzgerald's getting a little bit older. It's such a wild card. David Johnson hasn't been like that guy. So it's still – that team is a complete wild card.
And that's the story of the running back world. I mean, how many times have you seen a guy come out? I mean, who's the big story running backs this year if you wanted like top three in the NFL? I mean, you got, Henry?
Christian and Saquon? McCaffrey definitely top three.
Saquon, I mean, he just was stuck in a team that it was hard for him to be explosive. He was injured a lot this year.
Mm-hmm.
Mostert is one that, is
Raheem going to be like a top 5 back, you think?
Well, here's the thing is I think he'll be able to get himself paid if he's not still under contract.
He's like 28, though. I'm a little...
Well, here's my thing is...
It could have just been a one-game thing with that guy.
Here's my thing is running backs don't tend to get long contracts anymore. They don't get paid a ton of money, but he's going to get paid well for a running back, I think, if he goes somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
But I could see him maybe giving San Fran a slight discount. He seems very... I mean, it seemed like he was very happy with the fact that they gave him a chance when he's been to, 7 teams over the last few years and just hasn't been able to find a home.
Incredible story, huh?
And that's just it. Sometimes it's about, just the luck of the draw, the ability to show your talent because, guys come out of college and they're more talented and they're more, they're more mainstream, call them. And it's hard.
Get drafted high.
Take Boston Scott with the Eagles. If it wasn't for the magnitude of the injury problem in Philadelphia, would Boston Scott ever seen the light of day?
No. It would have been Sanders and Jordan.
I mean,
the whole year.
It's kind of the same thing.
And then Leonard Fournette will continue to get opportunities because he's like the fourth pick.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, teams tend to figure I put either a lot of money or draft stock into them. I got to do something. I can't just not use them because I look like I'm wrong. It's a little bit of an ego situation too, from an ownership and a management situation. So I think a lot of times. Guys like Mostert, guys like that just don't. They're not going to always get a chance to shine unless the opportunity arises. And I mean, even he was. I mean, the Eagles. A lot of the complaints from Philly people like myself, is that their lack of eye talent or their lack of talent they can eye from somebody is difficult. It's very difficult to watch how they look over people.
Well, there's always like those preseason guys in the that play against these third stringers. You know, like Paul Turner's like a popular one. Greg Ward, was Reno Mahe, I'm trying to think of another running back that because a lot of times
but
in
yet
the league,
they'll take Donnell Pumphrey and think he's going to be a huge.
Well,
hit.
that's the point. Like, say Donnell Pumphrey runs for 2 touchdowns in the 4th preseason game.
That doesn't mean anything.
It's so rare. Like, Mostert was a guy where I'd be like, dang, he's really doing well, but he's playing against these third string guys, and the majority of those guys are just third string guys. That's the thing. But every time I saw Mostert play, I'm like, this guy has some pop. Yeah. It seemed like he should be playing, but I say that about a lot of preseason guys.
Well, Mostert's the kind of guy that will be able to truck you. I mean, he's the kind of guy he's gonna make you feel the hit. I mean,
he's fast.
He's fast, but he's sizable too. He's not like Derrick Henry, like Mack truck through a pinhole, but when you get hit by him, you're gonna feel it.
I know I think he looks decently tall for a back. I don't think he's like
tall.
5'8".
I'm talking about more stocky. But I mean, and the funny thing is, like, certain teams don't. I mean, there's a flavor, I would like to say, that some teams like. I mean, look at. You have Boston Scott. Who'd you have before that? Darren Sproles in Philly. I mean, you went from Darren Sproles to Darren Sproles 2.0. Obviously, Doug Peterson likes that smaller, fast pass catching running back more than they like the LeGarrette Blount or Jordan Howards, who are going to ground and pound constantly over and over and over again.
Right.
Because I mean, and that's why people like, and I'm sure it's not just in Philly, but that's why people get very frustrated when you have like. I mean, there's been teams that have had 3-headed monsters, and there's a 1-2-3 punch combination that comes out of that. You know, in the beginning. You know, you're like, if I'm the Eagles and I have Jordan Howard back this year, you let Jordan Howard beat up that defensive line, because then sprinkle in some Miles Sanders, let him break some ankles at the same time, and then Boston Scott can do his thing more towards middle to the end of the game, because the O line is just not ready. I mean, the D line is just had their full at this point.
Exactly, and you're right. Like it comes down to certain types, and you have to fit in the right system. Have the right coach that just kind of can utilize your abilities. I want to go back though to the Super Bowl. So Mahomes is not playing well, but the thing about Patrick is that it seemed like the Chiefs. It seems like they score so effortlessly. Like the Watkins play looks like a great throw, and then they're all the way down at the goal line. It just happened so quickly with Mahomes. That throw to Tyreek Hill is obviously a huge play, but when you have that type of big arm quarterback, they're just they're able to achieve touchdowns in some of the easiest ways I've ever seen a team do it.
Well, I think Alex said it. He is a generational quarterback. He is that guy. I mean, he's going to be, outside of the Chiefs ruining it for him, he really should be contending, just like you always expected Tom Brady to be in contention for the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I think the Chiefs right now can be built to be like that, depending on how much they can keep together, because unfortunately when you win, as you know, you get picked apart by other teams, coaches and players alike.
Yeah, but also Mahomes could be making a ton of money, and that's why
he's going to get paid
now.
But
look, when Aaron Rodgers won that Super Bowl, you said he's going to be back. When Drew Brees won Super Bowl, he will be back. When Brett Favre went to back-to-back, he will be back in the Super Bowl. Andrew Luck never got. It's really hard, I think.
No, it's hard.
And I'm telling you,
that's what makes
I think I would be very surprised if he won 2 more. He might win 1 more.
Here's my
because
thing.
That defense is gonna.
Outside of New England, there really hasn't been too many back-to-back teams or mini dynasties, as I refer to them, as teams that continually go to the Super Bowl and have chances of winning them over a small time span. My point is, I think he has the most ability to do so. He's not just a running quarterback or a mobile quarterback, whatever you want to call him. He's not just a big arm. He's not just a play extender where you can plug a lot of guys in. He has a lot of those attributes. I mean, how many guys? You can look at, like, I'll even be Carson Wentz, and I'm a huge fan of Carson Wentz. A lot like Carson Wentz, they sometimes have to get to the outside, become a little bit more mobile, and throw outside the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
But he can also throw with inside the pocket. one of my keys to the game for San Fran to win was containing Patrick Mahomes. And they did that for about 3/4 of the game. And then when it didn't happen, what happened? But also they got lightning fast speed across that team on top of that. I mean, that goes to show you how important speed is on a team. You saw the Eagles put all their eggs in the basket with Deshaun Jackson, and that didn't pan out. And they couldn't find anybody even remotely close to fill the speed gap that they're looking for.
Right.
But you got Tyreek Hill. You got Sanders, Bebo. You got all the. Not Bebo. He's on the team. But you got.
Kelsey.
But I'm saying, look
Kelsey's
at both
the
teams.
big
You got
guy.
Emmanuel Sanders. You got Bebo. You got
Yes.
Watkins. Even Kelsey's big and fast. That goes to show you how important it is. Both teams that made it had speed all around.
Had
how
some
many
weapons.
times did you watch the 49ers throughout the year and into the playoffs run some jet sweep to the outside with just pure speed? It wasn't anybody who was going to overpower anybody running through a line. They were just able to get out there fast, and people couldn't contain
And
them.
you know what? You could find guys though, like Samuel is a 2nd-round pick, but it's not like these are the elite of. It's not like it's DeAndre Hopkins or the Odell Beckhams.
I absolutely agree, but
the Smith-Schusters.
And I think once again, going back to the Philly fans, that's what always kind of irked us over the last decade or two. Even with Andy Reid, even with Howie Roseman, even with Doug Peterson and Chip Kelly. I'm not sitting here saying drafting's easy. I'm not going to say that. But here's my thing is, if you're drafting, like last year the Eagles were drafting just as a luxury because they didn't really need any spots filled. Well, we all know that's not true now. But that's the thought process. But,
Yeah, they got to the Saints in the 2nd round, yeah.
But here's my thing is, now you're drafting, you got to fill in gaps, you got to get young, you got to get young in the right places. With the Eagles, wide receiver, cornerback, safety, I would even hope linebacker is going to be something that's going to be gaps being filled.
Agreed.
But my thing is, it always seems to be, and a lot of teams do this, not just Eagles, but I'm using them as an example, they have to be the smartest man in the room. Not be, here's the guy that has the most upside on paper. Everybody knows about. It goes back with J.J. Arthur-Whiteside with the Eagles. Who was available at that time? Now that's not to say if he wasn't here, if he was here, he would have the same success. But
Metcalf, is that who you were going to say?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I was just saying who's
Metcalf was there, but the Eagles were like, Alshon's leaving. This guy is like an Alshon clone, and then Howie would have been made to look like a genius because Jeffrey would leave. You know what I'm saying? They're always thinking 2 steps ahead, but at the same time, the guy had a lateral cone drill where he didn't do well. His route tree wasn't the most extensive route tree, but the fact is, like, you shouldn't overthink it. To your point, this guy is a freak athlete. He's in amazing physical shape, and you know what? I just felt that DK Metcalf would have been a perfect pick. And teams do overthink it, and drafting is tough. But yeah, to your point, just speed just really helps.
Like I said, look at the teams that made it. They had speed, and power, usually and for a team that's been very, like the Eagles, once again, a team that's been very pass heavy throughout the years, they never put much stock into wide receivers. I mean,
into the jet sweeps and the
well, look, they got Nelson Aguilar, and that was a Chip Kelly blunder, but I mean, everybody's like, oh, he had that one good year and you won the Super Bowl. But did the team win the Super Bowl because of Nelson Aguilar, or did he just was icing on the cake at that point?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with the latter in that situation, of course. It's just that I think now, hopefully, if this team has learned anything, is that speed is the name of the game. And in one of the mock drafts I did, I went with the most speedy available wide receivers available, and then towards the end, if they get all 10 picks, or 8 to 10 picks. Towards the end, there was a couple guys that still there's a very high wide receiver heavy draft.
Yeah,
there's a couple guys that have some speed, not the fastest guys, but have length too. Because there's a couple guys coming out of more of the Midwest teams, Western
like
teams.
Baylor. Like Mims was a guy, but did you look at Jalen Reagor, who's fast from TCU?
Yeah, but I'm just talking
Henry
about guys.
Ruggs.
I'm talking about like more later round guys who are going to be like.
But one thing
have
is,
length and speed.
one thing is though, every team is kind of different. Aaron Rodgers is a different type of guy. He has Devontae Adams, and when you look at the Vikings, I like teams that are balanced, though, able to run the
here's my
football.
thing about-
Kansas City with Mahomes, and they do have like track stars on their team. That's just one style. I think it's very hard to replicate the Mahomesian Reid
Here's
offense
my
with
thing
all these fast
with,
guys.
with Green Bay, and it's always kind of scratched my head is they've had Aaron Rodgers healthy for the most part, a couple of years here and there where he hasn't been super healthy, but. Yeah, I mean, like you said, he hasn't been able really to get back into it. This was the closest he's made it back in a long time. But like, really, what do they? Like, they don't do any big name signings, which is not a good or a bad thing in my world.
They never have done those signings.
No, they never did big name signings. They don't really trade draft picks, but they also don't draft enough. Like, I just don't seem like they overput. Like, they never seem like you've had all this time. You've had down years where Green Bay wasn't great. You would think by now they would have been able to draft and put enough pieces into place. Devontae Adams, yeah, they struck on some guys, but they never seem to have enough. Like, here's Aaron Rodgers, but here's an O-line that's never that great. It's very mediocre at best. He has a couple good wide receivers. Sometimes you get the running back here and there. Sometimes
they don't want to take a risk because when you're a free agent, even if you're talented, your character is a question mark. So, like, for an example, they would never go sign a Jadeveon Clowney. They would never make the splash for, like, a Richard Sherman. Honey Badger was like a trade that the Chiefs did. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes it rewards teams that are aggressive, but at the same time, you have to walk that fine line out because look at Cleveland. They trade their linemen. They get Odell Beckham. They get Olivier Vernon. The Giants a couple years ago took a splash on all these free agents. You don't want to overpay and be stuck.
Oh, yeah.
So it's such a fine line. But to Green Bay's point, maybe they were too conservative.
Well, that's
I do like building for the draft, and culture is what Green Bay has always been about.
Yeah, but how many Super Bowls has that won then?
You're right. But they should have been maybe a tad more aggressive. You're absolutely right.
Listen, everything in life's a moderation situation, from eating to drinking and everything else in between. I think football runs the same way. Like, I'm not saying that the teams with the best wide receivers and speed are always going to win. That's not always true.
Right.
Or defense wins championships. They're all poignant things. The 49ers were not just a great defense. They were a great defense with a very good offense to connect it to them with speed around them and a serviceable quarterback. I'm not going to give Jimmy Garoppolo like a great quarterback, but a very serviceable, better than average.
Yeah.
And I think if he had a second chance at it, he would probably win that game.
And that team was just so complete. I think that they were even more complete than Kansas City.
Yeah.
That team.
And here's the thing is if Kansas City's defense did not step up over the last few, especially into the playoffs, I don't know if they would have even made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, they were down every game at one point. And it's not easy to be down that many games in the playoffs especially and be able to come back and win them all.
I don't think it's ever happened down 10 points in every single game that you're playing in. Against Houston, you thought that this team might have been bounced in the first round when you're looking at 21-0. But the fact that Reid – I just felt it's Reid's time, and sometimes you have those kind of karma things catch up to you. I just think it was the magic of Reid in the end of this game,
well,
I'm happy for him. It was finally his time to win a championship, and actually, you were probably watching that game, and when Mahomes threw that second interception, did you say to your buddies, this is like a McNabbian performance? Did you say that at any points during the game? Because there were some routine throws he was throwing low.
Yeah,
and he would still be criticized if he couldn't win this game. There would be McNabby.
Listen, when you
comparisons.
win, you're great, and you look at the good parts. When you lose, like the 49ers, everybody's going to pick apart all the stuff they did wrong.
Yes, and the fourth quarter,
that's life.
Mahomes having the wherewithal just to continue to play the game and stay with it was what made it so special. That belief. There wasn't a lot of rah-rahness. I didn't see him like jumping on the sidelines. They didn't show that. But for Kansas City to pull that out, it did feel like they almost stole the game. But they were down 10. It felt like more points. But Kyle at the end of the first half just played so scared. And I completely agree with you there at the end of the first half.
Well,
why wouldn't you trust Jimmy Garoppolo? And then he said, I'm scared of Mahomes, and you have to trust your quarterback if you want to be a champion. And he didn't do it.
Well, like I said, if he went pass heavy, people would criticize him for being pass heavy. He should have ran the ball more. If he ran the ball more, people would criticize him. That
Right, run, punt.
Once again, it's sprinkle. But you also, when you throw too much, you don't kill enough time on the clock, and then you get, then you give them chances to get back into it. I felt that turn coming once they started once it looked like the Chiefs were making a comeback and the 49ers couldn't string any plays together and big open passes were being missed. It was hard to start to think like, here we go. If you're a 49ers fan, you start coughing a little bit because I'm sure if you were at a party, especially in San Fran, they were celebrating prematurely a little bit because
yes, after that pick.
Yeah, after that pick, you're figuring, all right, man, it's all but over, and like we said, no, but that's what. Here's the thing: is all the intangibles that it makes a quarterback great is arm strength, accuracy, speed, mobility, IQ, resilience. What haven't I mentioned that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have?
The
yet?
ability to forget. And he's able to put touch on his passes, and that Niners defense is a special defense. And they were a Super Bowl defense and a Super Bowl team, and that's why that game was so close.
And listen, the thing is a good quarterback can help a good team win. A great quarterback like Patrick Mahomes can make a good team better.
And that's my point. That's why it's going to be hard, though, to have a dynasty because I don't think their team is that good around them. Spags did a tremendous job. I just think that Mahomes took this league by storm. He's playing at peak of powers, the best that Pat's going to play, and we hope that Pat can stay healthy and continue. And it really was an exciting game. I thought the halftime show, you like the halftime show? The music was just all right.
What
but
heterosexual
girls were
male
they were very.
I don't care if you're 25 or 45 or 55.
Or 70.
You were 70.
80.
Those girls look good for their age.
They absolutely looked good.
And they moved around well, and I know a lot of people were up in arms about it because, they thought it was a little too risque.
Or inappropriate for the kids.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, man.
For the kids.
Nobody...
I actually think those people got made fun of more.
Yeah, whatever. It is what it is.
It absolutely is what it is. And, it's an entertainment Super Bowl show. The game went by pretty quickly.
There's cheerleaders dressed in this almost same exact clothes on any sideline at any time during an NFL game.
Correct.
Let's calm down, guys.
I don't mind. Those people are harmless, though.
Yeah, well.
Those people that say it's inappropriate.
It's usually people who don't look good in that clothes. It's funny because I'm watching it with friends and my family, and my wife and her sister are sitting there watching it, and they're like, they're more amazed at how hot these girls were than I was.
Right,
and then the guys in the room
so
were
good.
like, being 45 and 50 years old, or 43 and 50 years old,
yeah. Mm-hmm. And when you have mixed company, you don't want to just say anything. But yeah, it was a dang good football game. Shanahan is not going to be able to sleep well, and the only thing that
does Shanahan take this, work with it, and learn from it, or does Shanahan?
But you know what's so hard, Al, is that getting to a Super Bowl is hard. You can't achieve the goal for another year, even if Shanahan goes 14-2, has an amazing regular season. It's so hard for him now because he got so close. So for Jimmy G and Shanahan, it will always be marked until they can win a Super Bowl. It's the worst feeling in the world because now football is not enjoyable anymore.
Well,
it's not enjoyable.
Andy Reid did it for many years, 20-some years.
But he got to the NFC Championship.
Okay.
So he never got to the Super Bowl.
Yes, he did, 2004.
But also in that game, the Patriots led that thing wire to wire, for 3 quarters, and the Pats were the better team. I don't think people were saying that he choked. Shanahan up 28-3 and loses.
Listen, Andy Reid has a stigma, especially in this town, because how hard-nosed the Eagles fans can be, as choking or not being able to win the big game, which to me is the same thing, choking or not being able to win
in the NFC Championship.
Listen, yeah, like the Super Bowl and how many NFC championships did they?
Those losses were tough,
many-
but they got run in those games by Carolina and Tampa.
Yeah, they go in as the better team and they have their asses handed to them. I mean, that's a problem. So,
But it's even worse when you have the game right there. Right there.
2004, the game was there for the taking.
I'll tell you, it's interesting, too. Wes Welker is a wide receivers coach. He's 0-4 now. He's cursed. He was on the Patriots. He couldn't win one. He dropped that pass. I think he must be cursed. And it's almost like the Bills. I'm sure that it's just so hard to get to this stage. And now, like, you know what's funny is that, so Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins loses in the divisional round when several people are watching, but I think that Kirk Cousins has a better public reputation than Jimmy Garoppolo, because when you get to a Super Bowl and fail, it's so magnified for your life. Whereas if you lose in the divisional round, it's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
Just to the public, and that's why it's hard for Jimmy Garoppolo, and for Jimmy, it's almost like it is kind of a curse, actually, that his running game's so damn good, that his defense is so amazing, because now if he wins, he doesn't get that much credit, and now if he loses, it's all on him.
Yeah, listen, like I said, I think you got a good team in San Fran, and they have the ability to be a good team for a while. I'm not down on Jimmy Garoppolo, as some people are, like, thinking questioning him.
Yeah,
nobody will be questioning him right now if they won that game. It's just how it works.
Yeah, he played well in the third quarter. He might have been an MVP.
Yeah, like I said, did he get a little jittery towards the end when things started going the other way? Was it the entire team? I mean, he didn't just lose the Super Bowl. You know, did Kyle Shanahan's play calling change? Yeah, I mean, a lot of those things can be brought up to the fact, but the beauty of today is new year. 101st year of the NFL. You know, not technically doesn't start yet, but it's this. The 100th year of the NFL is over. This season's over. It is now time for 2020 football to begin.
It's a long way away.
Well, it is and it isn't. One thing that the NFL is good about, there's a lot of stuff spread out over time. You got free agency.
Yes.
Well, you got legal tampering. You got legal tampering, free agency, and then you start going into the draft.
Legal tampering, a little combine. XFL. Hopefully the XFL will at least give us a little football fix. And, yeah, it's a reshuffling of the deck, Al. It absolutely. And I love the reshuffle.
And the show off here, this might be a reshuffling of the NFL with, big names out there that could be going to other teams, making the outlook of other teams look, not what we've been used to seeing over the last decade or so.
The quarterback carousel.
I mean, the big one is Tom Brady.
Yes.
I mean, where's Cam Newton going to end up? There's a lot of names out there that
Tom Brady trolling us on every single Instagram post or whatever.
All right, bud.
And guess what? And next week we are going to talk a lot. We didn't mention this today, but we are going to talk about the Sixers. There's certainly a boatload of issues to talk about with that basketball team. NBA trade deadline, and hopefully we get Sports Doc Charlie Bowles coming in next week. But Al, great Super Bowl wrap up today, and thanks to you and Alex Rollins from calling in. And Big Al, it was a lot of fun, man.
Had a lot of fun tonight, Spence.
All right, guys, take care.